Welcome once again to the Undiscovered Games video podcast, where we take a look at the lesser-known board games of the world and share those with you. I am super excited for this one because it's one of the most undiscovered games I've ever featured here, and it's called Banque Fatale. This is from 1997, designed by the great Stefan Dorra, one of my all-time favorite game designers, as most of you know by now, and this was published by Blatz. Blatz was an old German publisher in the 90s who later became Schmidt. They actually bought Schmidt and then carried on the Schmidt name. I covered Stonehenge earlier on this channel. That was also another Blatz game, and we actually looked at several of these back on episode 54. We unboxed a few of them live on camera, and it was a lot of fun. So if you want to check out episode 54, you'll have to become a member of the channel. It's a members-only episode. This episode today was actually voted on by the channel members, so thank you to all the OGs for casting your votes and for directly supporting this channel to keep it alive. If you'd like to become a member yourself, just look for the join button below the video or in the video description to learn all about the membership perks. Alright, let's take a look at Banque Fatale. What is this game all about? Well, it's a 30 to 45 minute game, so it's like a borderline filler game, and it's all about commodity speculation and blind bidding. Each turn there will be a card up for grabs, and all the players will submit a simultaneous blind bid. It's a closed fist auction where you take these colorful bidding chips, put them in your fist, and reveal them simultaneously. Whoever bids the most chips wins the card, but then the colors that all the players bid with will directly affect the value of your cards. It's a really interesting mechanism. I can't say I've ever seen anything quite like this, so this one's going to be a fun game to discover today, but I do need to highlight something up front. This game was only ever published in German, and there's an unofficial English translation floating around on the internet. That was the translation we used to learn the game, and after we played our first game, something just felt really off. Like, it just didn't seem right. So I ended up just throwing this whole German rulebook into Google Translate, and I translated the entire rulebook myself, and what I found blew my mind. One rule was completely missing from the translation, and another more important rule was totally mistranslated, and it was only a single two-letter word that was incorrectly translated, and that two-letter word completely changed the game. So I cannot stress this enough. Please, please, please watch through the full tutorial here. It won't take me very long to teach you this game. I just want to make sure you're playing it the correct way. Once we all played it properly, this game went from trash pit to smash hit. Just like that, and that's the title of today's episode. Before we get started, make sure you are subscribed right here on YouTube at undiscovered_games to learn more about lesser-known board games like Banque Fatale. So let me show you how to play this game. It's very easy to learn and teach, and then I'll come back at the end with my rating and review. We're setting up a 3-player game, but the setup is the same whether you play with 3 or 4 players. Place the game board in the center of the table. The board has a place for your Fatale cards over here, the bank cards over here, and then each of these columns will track the value of each color throughout the game. So we have 5 columns, 1 for each color. Place these 5 black cylinders on the 6 million space of each column. So these cylinders will go up and down as the color values change. All the colors start at 6 million. Find these colorful bidding chips and give 2 of each color to every player. So each player will start with 10 chips, 2 blue, 2 orange, 2 red, 2 yellow, and 2 green. You always keep your bidding chips secret behind your player screen, so give each player a screen, and then any leftover screens or chips, just throw them back in the box. Organize the money cards by number and make a stack of each value here on the right side of the board. Then you're going to find the Fatale cards and find all the single color Fatale cards. So these cards either show 1 or 2 colors. They always show the spade symbol here. So find all the single spade cards, mix those up, and give 1 randomly to each player. You always keep your Fatale cards face up in front of your screen so all players can see which cards you have. Take the rest of the Fatale cards and shuffle them together and make a face-down stack here on the top left of the board. Draw the top 3 cards and reveal them face up on these 3 spaces. And that's all there is to set up the game. It's a quick, breezy setup, and I love that because when you're finished playing, it's so easy to just set right back up and play again. So let me give you a very brief overview of the game, and then I'll go over each step in detail. The The first part of the round is the start player chooses one of these 3 cards to put up for auction. Everybody takes a secret number of bidding chips into a closed fist. You simultaneously reveal your bids. Whoever bid the most chips wins the card. Very simple. Now you take all the chips that the players bid with, and you have to adjust the price charts out here depending on which colors everybody bid with. I'll go over that in more detail later. After you adjust the price charts, then everybody drafts these chips one at a time back behind their screen. So you just go clockwise, taking one at a time until there's no chips left. After that, the start player has the opportunity to sell 1 card to the bank if they wish, and that's the end of the round. Start player goes clockwise, and they start the new round by putting another card up for auction, and so on. As soon as this deck runs out, the game ends. You just play through this whole deck, and then you tally up your final scores. Very, very simple structure, but let's get into more detail about the round. So for the first round of the game, just choose a start player however you see fit, and the start player chooses one of these 3 face-up cards. Let's say they choose this red-yellow card here. They're going to take this card, place it at the top of the board to show that this card is up for auction. Now, before you do the auction, you should immediately refill this empty slot with the top card from the deck. So you always can see which 3 cards are available. That gives you a little more of a window to be able to plan with which colors you want to bid with. Now each player bids for this card. So you take a secret number of chips from behind your screen, put them in a closed fist, and when everybody has their bid ready, you simultaneously reveal your bid. So let's say I bid 4 chips. I have 2 red, a yellow, and a blue. This player also bid 4 chips. They have 1 red, 2 blue, and 1 green. And this player only bid 2 chips, 1 yellow, 1 blue. So the bids are 4, 4, and 2. Whoever bids the most chips wins the card. However, here we have a tie for most chips, so ties are broken starting with the start player and going clockwise. So since I'm the start player, I'm considered the highest bidder. I take this card, put it in front of my screen next to my single yellow card from the beginning of the game, and now you can think of these colors as shares of stock. So I have 2 shares of yellow and 1 share of red. Now we're ready for the second part of the round, which is adjusting the price charts for each color. So any chips that were just bid with go in the center of the table and you organize them by color. So here you can see we have 3 reds, 2 yellows, 4 blues, and 1 green. Now you look to see which color was bid with the most. So here blue showed up the most. That color goes up 2 million on this price chart. It's always a flat 2 million increase, so even if there were like 10 blue chips out here, you would only raise this 2 notches. It's also worth noting that you must have at least 2 of that color represented for it to increase in value. So if everybody bid like 0 chips and one player bid 1 blue chip, well, blue is the most common, but there's only 1 of them. So it will not go up in value unless there's at least 2, and it's the most used color. Now, if multiple colors tie for the most, then you just raise all of them by 2. So if we had like 4 blue, 4 green, and 4 yellow, all 3 of those colors go up 2 million. Then you have to look to see if any colors only have 1 chip out there. Those are going to drop by $1 million. So here we only have 1 green chip. Green goes down by 1. And again, if there were multiple colors with only 1 chip, all those colors drop by 1 million. Finally, you have to look to see if any colors are missing from the bid. So here, nobody bid any orange chips. This is the critical rule you have to get correct for the game to work properly. And this is the rule that is not translated properly in this English translation. If there's any colors that were not bid, those colors tank to the bottom of the chart. So here, orange goes all the way down to the bottom, no matter where it is here. And that is brutal. And that's a huge part of the strategy in deciding which colors to bid and when. I'll get into more of the strategies here in a minute, but just know that if a color is missing, it goes to the bottom of the chart. The English rules translation says it drops by $2 million, which just means you would move it down 2 notches. And that is not correct. If you put the German rules into the translator, it says the color drops to the $2 million mark at the bottom of the chart. And it says it's absolutely fatal when that happens. And that's the whole name of the game, is Banque Fatale. So this rule is absolutely essential to get correct. And if you don't play it the right way, the game will not make any sense to you. This is like the whole point of the game, is that colors can tank in value if nobody bids them. Now let me finish out the rules for the round, and then I'll talk more about that rule and why it's so important. So after you've adjusted the value of all the colors, now you do a draft one at a time around the table, taking these chips back. You start with the player to the left of whoever won the card. So in our example, I won the card. This player takes the first chip. They choose one, put it behind their screen, and then you just take turns choosing one at a time around the table until there are no chips left. After you redistribute all those chips, now you're ready for the final step of the round, and this is where the start player gets to decide if they would like to sell 1 card back to the bank. Only only the start player gets to do this. The start player can look at all their cards that they've saved up, and they can choose one to sell back to the bank. You cannot sell a card that you just won in the auction. And this is the rule that was completely missing from the English translation. So this is another very important rule. You cannot sell the card you just won. So in our example, I could not sell this red-yellow card this round because I just won it. But in our example, I could sell this single yellow card if I wanted to. If I decide to sell this card goes out of the game completely, and I take the current value on the chart. So I look wherever the disc is on this yellow track, it's at 6 million. I just take the 6 million from the bank and keep it behind my screen. Just remember, only the start player is allowed to sell one of their cards each round. It's basically a risk-reward thing. Like, you can cash out now and take the sure money, or if you keep the card, maybe that value will increase throughout the game and be worth more later in the game. But remember, if nobody bids that color, that value is going to tank to the bottom of the chart, and it's very hard to recover from that. There's another little incentive to hold on to your cards, and that's where these bonus payouts come into play. Notice at the top of the chart, we have the 11 and 12 space, and these are kind of grayed out. This is to remind you that when you're doing your price adjustments and the disc ends on the 11 or the 12 space, you have to pause and do an immediate payout to all players who have shares of that color. It's sort of like a dividend payment. So every spade is like a share of stock. The bank pays half of this amount. So if it's on the 11, you'll get $5 per share. If it's on the 12, you'll get $6 per share. After everybody gets paid for all their shares, this price resets to 6 million. So again, I kind of think of it like a dividend payment or even like a stock split where you get to bank some of the money, but then the price resets. Anyway, after the start player decides if they want to sell one of their cards, that's the end of the round. Then the start player just goes to the next player in clockwise order, and they repeat those steps, starting with choosing one of these 3 cards to put up for auction. You just keep doing this until you play through this entire deck. Once you auction off the final card, you finish out that round, and then you go to end game scoring. So let's talk about the scoring. It's very simple. First, any cards that you have saved in front of you, you get paid from the bank based on their current color value. So every spade is like a share of stock. You just look at the price chart at the end of the game, and wherever those discs are, that's how much you get paid per spade. Very simple. You're also going to get 1 million per leftover bidding chip that you have behind your screen, and then you just add that to any cash that you banked throughout the game. That's your final score. Whoever has the most money wins. If you have an idea for an official tiebreaker, drop that in the comments below. There is no official tiebreaker in the rulebook. And that, my friends, is how you play Banque Fatale. A very easy game to learn and teach, but a very tricky game to master. So let me get into my rating and review. There's a lot of good, subtle depth here that does not reveal itself when you learn the game. But when you actually experience the game and sit down and play it, you'll see that it's a very fascinating design. So let's get into it. Now, the first thing I want to remind you of is this is not a super deep game. This is more of a filler game. So it's not going to be like this great, deep gaming experience that changes your life, but it is a very fascinating little game. I mean, this is what I would call a gem. It's just so elegant and pure and simple. It's quick to play, easy to learn, but a lot of fun, exciting tension that exists throughout the game. And I really like what this game does. I would put this in the same category as games that I've covered in the past, like Quandary or Paris Connection, or even a game like Keops, which is a little bit longer experience, but still that same idea of trying to speculate on the value of these goods. Do you sell them now or do you wait till later? So similar ideas there, but this uses the blind bidding, and that's what's really cool in this game is the mind games you get to play with each other, and just, how many chips are they going to bid? Which colors do I need to bid with? There are some really interesting strategies you can try, and most of those strategies are centered around the whole idea that the price of any color can tank if nobody bids that color. And I just can't believe how much that one little rules translation makes all the difference. It was literally a 2-letter word. The English translation said if a color is not bid, it drops by 2 million. The real rules say if a color is not bid, it drops to the 2 million, which is the bottom of the chart. And that makes all the difference. It doesn't seem like it would, but when you play the game, you'll quickly see why that matters. I mean, the fact that a color can tank any time throughout the game just makes it so much more tense, because now all of a sudden you have to protect your cards. You're going to be saving up all these cards of different spade colors, and then you have to make sure you have chips of those colors to be able to bid bid with them to ensure that those colors don't tank. And another strategy you can try out is if another player is going heavy on a certain color, you can try to hoard those chips behind your screen and not bid them to try to tank that value. So you can play the game offensively or defensively, but you have to do a little bit of both. You can't do everything, and you have to kind of protect your colors. I love that. It's so cool. And like I said, that rule brought that idea to life, and it just fascinates me that one little word, it's the difference between the word buy and the word to, can make or break the game. You have to keep an eye on the cards that your opponents are saving up. If I'm saving a lot of yellow spades and another player has a lot of yellow spades, maybe I don't need to bid as high on yellow. Maybe I can rely on that player to also submit some yellow bids, and then everybody's thinking the same thing and nobody submits yellow, and then it tanks to the bottom. So there are just lots of mind games that happen between everybody. That blind bidding system, it's so simple, but there's a lot to think about there. I also like how you can see all three cards that are available for the next round. You might not know which one of those will be chosen, but you can use that to drive your decisions a little bit, like which colors you want to bid heavy on, which colors you might want to save back for the next round. So you have to pay attention to which cards your opponents have, which cards are coming out, which cards are due to come out. You can do a little card counting, things like that. A lot of subtle depth here, and this is one of those games that, even though it's super simple, this is going to take a learning game. You're going to have to play a game of this just to see how it plays out. Once you get that learning game under your belt, you will be much better at pricing out your bids, knowing when to bid high or low. You don't want to bid too high too soon, because if you run out of chips, it's hard to kind of catch up with the rest of the pack. But a lot of that depends on what the other players bid. I love how the chips get redistributed too, because if you bid really low this round, chances are you're going to get more chips back for next round. But that all depends on what the other players bid. But if you bid really high, you're probably going to get fewer chips back for next round. So there's that closed economy of bidding chips always switching hands between the players, and that's a fascinating system as well. So lots of fun stuff to play around with here. It's one of those games that you just want to set up and play one more time. Let's play one more game. It's so easy. You just shuffle the cards, reset the values, give everybody their starting chips, and go again. So it's a very addictive game, but again, it's very simple, so don't look for some crazy depth to reveal itself. It's just got some interesting subtleties. So as a board game, amidst all the games in my collection, I give this a very solid 9 out of 10. That's an A- on my grading scale. It's not a game we're going to play all the time because it's so light and quick, but it's a great warm-up game or a cool-down game to a bigger game night. And even though it's kind of like a borderline filler at 30 to 45 minutes, I still kind of look at this as a filler game. And if I was going to rate this as a filler game, I'd give it a 10 out of 10. This is everything I want out of a filler. It's just super simple, packs a little punch into a short playtime, very satisfying, lots of fun tension, lots of fun stuff to play around with. The box is not super big. It's easy to store, easy to take with you somewhere. And I love the aesthetics of this game too. I mean, the box art is fantastic. It's got that old school classic look. And then the board has all these little details like the whiskey glass. And then they put some wear marks on it to make it look older. The cards, even though they're very simple, they're very functional, easy to see at a glance. And even the cards have that old school look to it. So I just really like how this looks on the table. It's very compact. Everything comes together in a really nice package. These player screens are super thick and durable. Some of the nicest player screens I think in my entire collection. So I'm really impressed by these Blatz games. And like I said, if you want to check out some other ones, I did some unboxings on episode 54. But again, that's a members only episode, and I'd be happy to have you join the channel and check it out. If you want to learn more about the membership perks, you can click the join button below the video or in the video description. If you're having trouble with that link, it could be the device you're using. So just try a different device or a desktop computer. Once you become a member, then you should be able to use the YouTube app as usual. And if you're not ready to become a member yet, that's totally fine. Just click subscribe right here on YouTube at undiscovered_games to learn more about lesser known games and follow this journey with me to discover the undiscovered games. I have hundreds of games to feature still. I try to release an episode about every 2 weeks or so. Now we're getting into the busy holiday season here, so I might be a little longer than usual in my next couple episodes, but after the first of the year, we'll be back on the normal posting schedule. So the next episode is episode 57. That's going to be a members only episode. That one I am going to try to get out within the next 2 weeks, so members, you can look out for that one. And episode 58 will be the next public episode, and that will be sometime early 2025. I hope you all have your Christmas shopping done, because spoiler alert, it's less than a week away. So I just hope you all have a fun and safe holiday season. Hopefully it's filled with lots of gaming. Let me know in the comments what games you're hoping to get to the table over the holidays. What games are you hoping that Santa brings you from your wish list? And I hate to break it to you, but even Santa cannot find any used copies of Hellas, so don't get your hopes up for that one. Merry Christmas, everybody. Happy holidays. Happy New Year. And members, I'll see you on episode 57. The rest of you, I'll be back on episode 58 early in the new year. We'll see you then.